Welcome to Peloton Magazine and Aérogramme subscribers. This podcast is created in partnership with the global team at La Course on Tête and the crew at award-winning Peloton Magazine. Keep your breath bated for the Peloton Pass, which will include this podcast and be available for all fans of cycling in 2021. And remember, you can catch highlights from both the men's and the women's Liège-Bastogne-Liège on demand in the United States, Canada and Australia at flowbikes.com. Plus, go inside the race with athlete interviews, in-depth course previews, expert analysis and other exclusive content. Subscribe now at flowbikes.com/aerobikes. That's flobikes.com/aerogram. Start the funky music.
Hello, it's Jeremy Whittle on the sunny Sussex coast of southern England.
Hello, it's Peter Cossins in the soon-to-be very wet Pyrenees in the south of France.
And it's OJ Borg who has reappeared from his lamp because a genie rubbed it. And be honest, come on, be honest. How many tears were shed that I wasn't here last week, Peter? I'm not asking Jeremy because he's got power. Power's gone to his head. How many tears were shed? Lots?
I'm not saying anything. I feel compromised here.
I mean, Sophie's so upset. She thought Jeremy was going to be in charge again. She's not even come this week.
I think the rating was really good last week.
Yeah, I've never seen so many 5 stars, all from people whose name ended in Whittle, bizarrely.
I've got a big family.
So then, we have a big old show for you to talk about the final of the Spring Classics here on La Course on Tête. And it's been a busy few days before we get into it in road racing. So here to bring us right up to date with the last weekend of the Classics and the fast-moving Giro d'Italia build-up, from which Thibaut Pinot will be missing, more about that later, while Egan Bernal's participation is rumoured also to be in doubt. It's William Fotheringham, who is, yes, in the club chair of news.
I'm back in the club chair after a welcome week off with a brown Belgian beer to celebrate the finish of the Spring Classics for 2021 with 2 5-up sprints in Liège. In the morning, the women's LBL went to Demi Vollering of SD Works, a breakthrough win for her, ahead of Annemiek van Vleuten. That's one for the photo album. And in the afternoon, it was Tadej Pogačar from Julian Alaphilippe, who simply can't seem to get this race right. Last time a men's tour winner triumphed in La Doyenne, Bernard Hinault in 1980. Midweek, it was a tale of 2 world champions at Flèche Wallonne. Anna van der Breggen, beginning a stunning week for SDW, and Alaphilippe outgunning Primož Roglic. There's been a bit of racing down in the Alps on the Austro-Italian border as well, in what might be the hilliest short stage race of the year, where Simon Yates made a welcome return to form after his withdrawal from the Giro last year, dominating from day 2. At the other side of the form field, Chris Froome made it into the suicide break on the final stage, but his 93rd place overall suggests he's not en route to a 5th Tour title this year. Other headlines. The big news was Thibaut Pinot's withdrawal from the Giro, not a huge surprise given his disastrous form in the Alps, while La Course by Le Tour has been moved forward a day to accommodate French local elections and will now take place on the first day of the men's Tour de France. The 4 days of Dunkirk has been postponed due to the pandemic. Former Team Sky doctor Richard Freeman is to appeal a verdict of the Medical Practitioners Tribunal, which saw him struck off the doctor's register. The Italian Vini Zabu team, run by Mercurial ex-pro Luca Scinto, he of the epic hissy fit bottle bung in last year's Giro stage Mount Etna, has been banned for 30 days after a doping positive in the team. So, long-time Italian stalwarts Androni Giocattoli, the only team with 6 sponsors' name on their shorts, will ride the Giro instead. And now we know who's going to be in the suicide moves every day, all the way from Turin to Milan via most of Italy next month.
Thank you to William Fotheringham. I don't remember. What's the hissy fit bottle bung story? Why don't I remember that?
But Luca Scinto was told not to give a bottle to a rider in a break because they were within 1 minute, weren't they? Wasn't that the situation, Pete? And he threw the bottle angrily at the commissaire. I can't remember exactly.
I remember, he tossed it at the commissaire. I can't remember exactly what the rule was, but whether it was in like the last 20k or the 1 minute.
That's right. They were like 10 meters inside the last 20k, or one. They'd just literally gone through it, and he was kind of trying to get up to him to pass the bottle to him, and the commissaire said no or yet or whatever, and he threw the bottle in had a hissy fit.
Well, let's leave bottles and bungs and hissy fits and talk about LBL, the doyen of the classics, which was Groundhog Day again as Alaphilippe was pipped on the line by a Slovenian. Different one from last year, but surely it was a little different. And I love Alaphilippe for the fact he keeps losing this race. Pete, was it a classic?
I thought it was sensational. I thought it was the best one-day race of the year so far. I mean,
well, that's a big. Why was it so good? Why was it the best of the year so far?
I mean, perhaps I'm overplaying it, because a lot of recent editions of Liège have been really poor, where we've kind of waited for the last few kilometres for anything to happen. But today it was kind of attacking from 80k out. There was a lot going on. There was lots of harrying of the favourites teams, Alaphilippe's team, Pogacar obviously for UAE, and Jumbo Visma, Primož Roglic. They were really handed the cosh by other teams, particularly Lotto Soudal, Ineos, Astana as well. So there was a lot going on, and in the end, I mean, as with the women's race, we ended up with 5 riders in the break, and it went to the final sprint. But it was totally engrossing.
I think been lots of talk about the changed finish, hasn't there? Which has moved away from this really dreary but very hard climb up to a left-hand bend and then a flat sprint, and I think it has improved it. The fact that you always seem to get this break off the last climb, the Côte de Rochefoucauld.
Beg your pardon.
That's right, isn't it? I did pronounce that correctly.
If you didn't, then there's a lot of very angry French people around now. I know.
I'll do that again. Anyway, so it's changed a lot of the dynamic, I think, because the final break has to form by the top of that climb. Isn't that right, Pete? Would you agree with that? And then there's this chase, always a pursuit into Liège through its beautiful suburbs into the sprint by the river.
Yeah, I mean it's before, when we were sprinting into Ons, the suburb of Liège, where it was held for, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16 years. There was a long drag where everybody waited. I mean, the race would whittle down, but essentially they would wait until this long drag before you'd see anything. So you really wouldn't see a great deal of action until the last 2 kilometres. Everything was kind of happening at the back of the race rather than at the front. Whereas the sprint being on the flat in Liège now has really changed the dynamic. Like you say, Jeremy, it's meant that people have had to move a bit earlier. It's made it much more unpredictable, because nobody really knows how well they're going to sprint after 258 kilometres on the flat. So uphill, it was a bit more predictable. On the flat, completely unpredictable, I think.
I mean, because I don't want to let anyone into the secret of the Le Course en Tête WhatsApp group, but there was definitely the F word was being bandied around about Liège, which was formulaic. And it wasn't this year.
Yeah, and I think that's been an accusation that you could level at both of the Ardennes Classic, Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And whilst Flèche Wallonne followed the kind of tried and tested strategy that most riders use, of kind of waiting until the break getting caught at the bottom of the Mur, and then it coming down to the big hits in the last 150 metres. Liège-Bastogne-Liège was different. I mean, I think there were some really big winners. Obviously, Pogacar is the biggest of the winners in this year's Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and some really big losers as well, because I think Alaphilippe again, I mean, I know this time he didn't raise his hands too early, there was nothing, he was just beaten in a straight up sprint. But to be twice as world champion, I mean, he's never going to have that opportunity again of wearing the rainbow jersey twice in that race. I mean, that's the complete freak occurrence, isn't it, because of the pandemic, that he was able to wear the world champion's jersey last autumn in Liège-Bastogne-Liège and lose it, and to do it again today.
Well, on paper, he is quicker, though, isn't he, than Pogacar?
Well, I think that's what everybody thought coming into the finish. He looked like he'd be the guy to watch. I mean, his team had set him up perfectly. It looked like he was the fastest man in the group. I mean, Alejandro Valverde was in there, and I don't know, 10 years ago, Valverde would probably have been the man to beat. But, I mean, at 41, he looked a bit... It did look a bit past it today. I mean, incredible ride for him to get into the front group. But, I mean, we saw Pogacar in a very similar sprint on I think it was stage 9 of the Tour de France last year into La Runze, where he was up against Mark Hirschi, quick in a sprint, Primož Roglic, and he beat everyone then. And kind of, as they came to the line, Pogacar, he he played it perfectly. He was right on Alaphilippe's wheel at the back of the group, and just judged it perfectly. It looked like Alaphilippe had made the right move, but Pogačar had timed it perfectly, and he got it by. I mean, it was close, but it was a wheel. It wasn't like last year.
We'll talk more about Liège in a second, but first I actually do want to hear from Alaphilippe. We do have a clip of him. So did he mess up again, or this time was he just beaten by the faster man?
Yes, for sure. I prefer to win, but I think I can be happy. It was a beautiful but really hard race. My team did a great job. I was focused to do a good sprint, and at the end Tadej was more strong, so he deserved the victory. Congrats to him, and it's nice to be on the podium, the Liège, second place.
But you were near last season. It is almost the same. It's so difficult probably to lose again against Slovenia.
Yeah, it was really strong today. We saw on the La Roche-aux-Faucons, also in the sprint. He won the Tour de France. He won a lot of races, and now he won Liège. It's incredible, and congrats to him.
My favourite story from the sprint was actually David Gaudu clinching third, which I think nobody would have expected. Everybody thought he'd be kind of way off the back of that sprint, but I think third for him was a really good result. And intriguingly, he made a bet with a mate in March, just before the Classic started, because he posted on Strava that he'd done a 7-hour ride in the southern French Alps, which was kind of 200k, and just with a kind of a zzz emoji, like I'm exhausted emoji, and his mate messaged him back and said, "Oh, that's the ride of a cyclotourist." So he said, "Okay, well, you can come and do 7 hours with me." And he said, "Yeah, well, if you get on the podium in the Ardennes, maybe I will."
And he's got the podium.
So he got the podium in the Ardennes, and now this guy is getting inundated with people trying to sell him an e-bike, because apparently he's not even a cyclist. He's just like his mate who goes down the pub.
Unlucky. Unlucky, what a great
Stupid
bet.
idiot.
What a great bet. Just a word on Valverde. I mean, he's 41. I mean, I always look at Valverde and think, God, he's so old, isn't he? Look how old he is. Look how old. He's like a vampire. And then I realise he's actually a year younger than me. But with Valverde, is it something we should celebrate? Valverde having this great career that's still going at his age. I don't know. It doesn't sit well with some people.
Doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with Pete either.
Yeah, it's one of those things where in some ways, you feel you should be going, wow, Valverde,
But
a race he's won 5 times over his 1,000-year career.
Yeah, the thing is, you 1,000-year career. The thing is, you say this to other pros, and they'll say, "Oh, he's a great bloke. He really does a shift in the breakaway, and he's a terrific guy. And look at his Palmares and his career record, blah 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 blah." And I just think of the well-known doping case that he was involved in, which is Operación Puerto, and the kind of fallout from that, which went on for years and years and is still sort of pretty much unresolved. And the fact that whenever he's asked about it, he kind of clams up and won't address it and has never apologised for it. And he was banned. I just think he's a disappointment from that perspective. But you say that to people on the coalface, and they just say, "Oh, you don't understand."
In the Spanish press, obviously he gets a lot of coverage there, being Spanish and on their main team. I mean, they do really laud him. And one of the things I always find remarkable reading a lot of the commentary there is that almost as if this massive doping scandal, which happened essentially in Spain, has been forgotten, and they've forgotten Valverde's part in it. And I don't know, I just find it bizarre. I mean, it's incredible what he's doing, but I mean, I can't be convinced by what he's doing because of what's happened in the past. So, I mean, I was glad that somebody else in that 5-rider break won rather than him.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to the women's Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which was exciting as well, another 5-rider break, as Pete said. Bigger disappointment in your eyes, Pete, Primož Roglic's defence or Ineos Grenadiers? Because they were making the race at some point and then it all sort of fell apart.
Yeah, it's funny with Ineos because I've been following a lot of the commentary post-race, and I actually thought they rode really well. I mean, one of the things that Liège has always lacked is teams who are willing to take it on from a long way out, and we saw they were one of the teams that did. I mentioned Lotto Soudal did it as well, Astana did it. And there was this one point where Theo Geoghegan-Hart did this amazing ride up La Redoute, about 30 k's out, and they ended up with, I think, 4 riders at the front of the race. And they kind of lost their way a little bit then, but even after that, we saw Adam Yates attack, we saw Richard Carapaz attack, and then get kicked off the race for going into the Mohoric tuck on descent briefly. I think the problem they had was that Tom Pidcock was their guy to win Liège today, and because of the crash that he had in Flèche-Wallonne, he didn't start, and it kind of left them a bit toothless when they needed somebody. If they'd had him there, their race would have been perhaps very different. But I don't think they raced that badly, and
it just didn't come to something.
Yeah, it just didn't pan out, and I kind of applaud them for at least giving it a go.
Exactly that, because they have had a classic season, which has been exciting. I mean, have they won a race? Did they win? Have they won anything through the classic season?
Dylan van Baarle won. I can't remember. Was it Dwars?
Yes, yeah. But I mean, that's not necessarily the point, because we're talking about them now as if they were kind of like
Lotto
the Cofidis team or something. And I mean, that's not what they do. They win. They're not there. I know there was this much vaunted thing that Brailsford come out with about, we're going to entertain. We're going to be the entertainers. It's so exciting. It's so thrilling. But at the same time, they would expect to have dominated on La Redoute as much, to have inflicted so much pain on La Redoute as they did. It's hard to reconcile yourself to the result that they've finally got.
Yeah, I mean, it seems weird on your point, Pete, that you're talking about somebody who's having his first season in pro cycling. He's not there, and Ineos are slightly toothless. I mean, it goes to show you what a season Tom Pidcock is having, because this is his last race before he goes onto the mountain bike for the Olympics. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. I mean, I don't think he was even supposed to ride Liège in the first place. So, I mean, I think his season was supposed to end with Flèche-Wallonne, if I remember rightly. But I mean, he's been astonishing. I mean, he's kind of put himself up there with the likes of Van der Poel and Van Aert and Alaphilippe as one of the real hitters in one-day racing, and it's been astonishing to see. And you kind of look at the rest of the Ineos team, and I mean, like Jeremy says, they've got an amazing lineup. And it's just incredible to see that Pidcock's just sort of right at the hierarchy there. They're all riding for him. His rise has been so rapid.
I mean, they must be gutted, the fact that he's going onto the mountain bike.
Yeah, I would think it's... well, I mean, as I understand it, he's going to come back in the Vuelta and ride that later in the season. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes in his first Grand Tour. I mean, if he can win a gold medal at the Olympics... I mean, it doesn't really earn anything for Ineos, but obviously they'll get some of the kudos from that as well, and it'll look great on TV in the UK if that happens. But they're going to miss him. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, he's been
They missed him in Liège, didn't they?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the women's Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which saw a passing of the torch of sorts at SD Works, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, it followed, or it set the pattern, I suppose, for the men's race in the afternoon, that in as much as kind of the race was together, or there was a group together coming on to La Roche-au-Faucon, the final climb, and it split there. It was Anna van der Breggen who essentially did the damage. She kind of, a bit like she did at Flèche-Wallonne, she went to the front and she just motored all the way up the climb. Eventually there were 5 riders, I think, that went out over the top. Ashley Moorman was the last one to get dropped, but she was an SD Works rider anyway. She'd done a lot of work for Van der Breggen and for Demi Vollering, and they dropped down into Liège. Van der Breggen again went to the front, worked for Vollering, who everybody thought was going to be the quickest in the sprint. It looked for a moment when Annemiek van Vleuten launched a sprint that Demi Vollering was going to get boxed in against the barriers, but she managed to squeeze her way through, and the sprint was easy for her, basically. I mean, she beat Van Vleuten by a mile.
And it was interesting, wasn't it, as well, that Anna van der Breggen gave an interview to Amy Lauren-Jones on La Course on Tête early this week. We had a story on the website about Anna van der Breggen talking about the fact that she's moving into sports directorship next year, and that she's, keen to kind of mentor some of the younger riders. And you saw this morning that that's exactly what she did, really, by setting up that win.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, it was that's going to be her new role. I mean, she looked absolutely elated when she crossed the line, kind of 5th place, last in the sprint, just kind of rolled across, but she was celebrating as much as Fotheringham, so it obviously meant a lot to her as well.
Which is great. I was just flicking through, just as you were talking, I was flicking through some tweets on Twitter. Lots of people saying that they reckon Liège-Bastogne-Liège is going to be great for the next few years, with the riders both on the men's and the women's side of things. They're just perfect for what we want to see in the Ardennes.
I think the thing about it is that we've got a lot of riders now who are okay, maybe they're not kind of like pure climbers, but they're really good climbers, and they're really punchy climbers, punchy sprinters in the Alaphilippe mode. Wout van Aert and obviously Mathieu van der Poel as well. You've got a whole clutch of riders who've come through. Roglic, I think, even though he can win Grand Tours as well, you'd include him in that group. So you've got a whole breadth of talent that those races are really suited to.
Indeed. Also, just another tweet that I just saw. Enjoyed Liège, wanted Valverde to win. Maybe next year, says this person who should remain nameless. But you two. And just to point out, on LaCourseOnTête.com, there is an interview with Anna van der Breggen. Amy Lauren Jones has spoken to her about her move into a DS role with SD Worx next season and the passing on of that knowledge to the team's young generation of talent. Well, if we're talking about Liège-Bastogne-Liège, remember you can catch highlights from both the men's and the women's Liège-Bastogne-Liège on demand in the States, Canada and Australia at flowbikes.com/Aérogramme. Now, next week sees the final stage race build up to the Giro d'Italia, which starts in Turin on May the 8th. I can't believe the Giro's almost here. The Tour of Romandie, most of the big hitters, including race winner Simon Yates, have already shown their hand at the Tour of the Alps. Let's hear from Team Bike Exchange Matt White on Yates and the Giro itself.
Yeah, we've just completed Tour of the Alps, and it was a brilliant exercise for us as a team to go through. We had a lot of guys there that had know how we ride as a group and as a team, and we've had some fresh faces that we wanted to introduce into that roster and build some confidence throughout the week. And 80% to 85% of the team of the Alps will be our team for the Giro, and it was a real confidence boost for the group, knowing how to control a race, how to win stages, and working in a way that Simon likes to work in a Grand Tour. And obviously to win the last race with Simon before he goes into the Giro is a big confidence boost that our preparation has gone well. The guys came from an altitude camp prior to the race, and now we're recovering and just spinning the plates there and making sure everyone stays healthy on our run into the Giro. As far as our rivals and our biggest challenges, I think Bernal and Lander. I think in the Quick Step team, they're taking Evenepoel. He hasn't raced this year since his big accident in Lombardy last year. Then you've got Almeida, who in his first Grand Tour last year as a Neo-Pro was very, very impressive. So there's some wild cards there. When we think about the course, what are our biggest challenges? Our biggest challenges, always in the Giro, is how people handle the last week. There's a sort of a template that the Giro uses, and that has never changed as far as the Dolomites, and the last week is always very heavy. The thing that stands out for me this year, besides the 2 TTs instead of 3, so being bookend with a 9K technical prologue in Turin, and then a last just under 30 kilometre TT in towards Milan, is there's a lot of stages that are quite grippy around the 3,000 metre of climbing mark, and they're not stages that are crucial for the GC guys to win or to gain or to lose time. But what they are crucial is wasting energy, riding conservative, utilising your team as best as possible. And we've had a good look at a lot of those stages, and I think how a team manages their effort through, especially the second week of the Giro, is going to have a pretty big impact on the last week, where we know that the Giro d'Italia is always won and lost.
Now, while Yates shone, the Alpine race proved a traumatic few days for French star Thibaut Pinot, whose fight to recapture his best form continues. Pinot has now been forced out of the Giro due to a lingering back injury. Here's his sports director, Philippe Madouy, talking about his injury problems.
Well, of course, Thibaut is having a hard time, you know. It's quite long since the end of the tour. He had a lot of appointment with specialists, with physios. He even went to rehabilitation center a few months ago to work on his back and so on. So he has done a lot of things, and the improvement of his status is not as good as he expect. Of course, he is having a hard time because of that, but he is also keeping good morale and fighting spirit. You know, every time, like now, he came to a race. After one day, he had a back problem again. Means the problem is not solved. So now he will rest a few days. He still have a lot of more appointment during the week with specialists, and we will meet some new specialists as well. Still working on it. If I think that Thibaut will lead the team again in a Grand Tour, yes, I think, but it's out of question for the moment. I mean, the main question is to fix the problem and to be sure that he will never have a problem again. That's the main question. So at the moment, there is no pressure to put on with leading the team in a Grand Tour.
Here to tell us more about what's next for the Frenchman and what it all means for French cycling in general is renowned French journalist Julien Prétot of Reuters. Julien, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone.
Well, good evening to you as well. And let's talk then about Thibaut Pinot and the traumatic few days that the French stars had. What is the feeling in France around French cycling and what's happening to Thibaut?
I think that unfortunately for him, you know, people have started to kind of give up on him. I mean, he's been on a downward trend since he had to abandon the 2019 tour, and I mean since then he hasn't really recovered. I mean, mentally and of course physically, you know, after his crash last year on the tour. And it's really hard, you know, for people to imagine that he will ever get back to the level he was at. I mean, even last year, when he started the tour, you know, he was, you know, you could tell, you know, that he maybe was not at the level of, you know, Pogačar, Roglic, and other, you know, youngsters, you know, coming up now. So now he's lost another season. I mean, because basically the season is over as far as, you know, leading on the Grand Tour is concerned. He's not going to lead on the Tour, that's for sure. And if he leads on the Vuelta, I mean, somehow it will be probably his first Grand Tour of the season. He'll have a very, you know, very difficult, you know, start to the season. He's not going to win the Vuelta, so he's lost another year, and he's not that young anymore. So I don't think people, I think people have kind of buried him.
Have they? Because the thing is, it's always seemed to me he was my pick for the Tour last year, I must admit. So it's my fault that he fell on the first stage by cursing him. It's never seemed to me like the hopes, you know, all the pressure that's come from French cycling when it's been on his shoulders. It's never seemed to have sat well with him.
Well, I'm not even sure it's the pressure of being a Frenchman on the Tour. I think it's the pressure of professional cycling, and I think he's made it very clear in one of the, you know, last couple of interviews he did with L'Equipe that maybe it's not his world. He needs a quiet environment. He needs to take things, you know, at his own pace. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still believe he is one of the top, you know, and one of the classiest riders there is in the professional peloton. But I don't think he sees himself, you know, as a professional rider. I mean, with all the demands that it implies, the not eating, I mean, near fasting, diets, you know, that some riders go through, that kind of thing. He's not that kind of rider. To me, he's one of the biggest talents in the last, you know, 10 years. But unfortunately, that's not enough, and I don't blame him. I mean, you know, it's his career, it's his life. I don't blame him at all. I mean, I love the guy, actually. And and I really thought he would win the 2019 Tour, actually, doing it his own way, and that would have been absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, he got that injury. But I'm 100% sure he would have won it had he not been injured. He would have beaten Bernal. I mean, he had showed it, in the Pyrenees, and usually when you're, up a notch, on one of the two mountain ranges on the Tour, then you go on to win it. You don't lose it in the third week. I don't believe in that kind of thing. So he would have won it in his own way. That would have been absolutely awesome. But now I think he will not, win a Grand Tour. I mean, we also have to face the fact that he has never won a week-long race, stage race, apart from the Tour of the Alps, I think a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, which is not exactly 1 week. So I think the ship has sailed for him in terms of Grand Tour, and it makes me very sad, but also, also happy for him maybe, because maybe that's what, he wanted.
Do you think that the rise of David Gaudu is now going to change the dynamic then in his team?
The dynamic in his team, I mean, there's a double dynamic in the team. There could have been, Gaudu versus Pinot, which is not the case anymore. I mean, not for this season at least. Now it's all for Gaudu on the ground. I mean, in terms of GC, but within the team you also have the, Gaudu versus Demar, and they're going on the Tour especially for Demar. So that's another thing that they have to, another problem they're going to have to address at some point on the Tour. Do they want to go with Demar? I mean, who's had a below average season? I mean, way far from his standards from last year. I mean, Demar, okay, he's won a few stages in Spain, but I mean, he hasn't even ridden the Tour of Flanders, for instance. I mean, and I don't see him. I mean, from what I've seen this season so far, and he still has time to improve, but from what I've seen so far, he's not going to win a stage on the Tour. While Gaudu could win at least a stage on the Tour, and he could, I don't know, with a proper team around him, but he could be like easy in the top 10. Maybe more. I mean, the problem is that he doesn't time trial. And the other problem that he has is that I think at FDJ they've waited too long, to give him the reins on the Grand Tour, to tell him, okay, maybe they should have started, I don't know, 2 years ago on the Vuelta, for instance. Say, okay, David Gaudu is a team leader. And he's going to lead a team on the Grand Tour, on the Tour de France this year. I mean, that's a lot.
Do you think then that Marc Madiot has backed the wrong horse in a way?
No, I don't think
by putting so much. I mean, I know that Pinot is their big star, so they put a lot of faith in Pinot to be the guy for the Grand Tours. But do you think that was a mistake now?
No, I don't think that was a mistake. I think the mistake they made is that they should have also groomed Gaudu as a Grand Tour leader earlier. Give him the keys on the Vuelta to start with, 3-week Grand Tour, or maybe on the Giro. And then, at some point, when in this year, when he's going to be the GC leader, he would have had already maybe 1, 2, or 3 Grand Tours where he was the team leader, under his belt. And now it's going to be Grand Tour team leader on the Tour de France. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask him, I think.
Well, let's just ask you quickly about what you think the future is for French cycling at Grand Tour level, because obviously when Pinot came through in 2019 and there was Pinot mania. I mean, I remember that year during the Tour how excited people were, and then going to the Tour de la Provence the following February, and it was incredible. He was a real rock star. He was, even though he'd quit the Tour in tears, people really loved him. So how is French cycling going to fill the gap now, the void?
I mean, if I'm perfectly honest, I don't know. I really don't know, because it's maybe there's generation gap. I mean, you've got. I mean, now we've got decent, more than decent classics riders. I mean, obviously Julien Alaphilippe, but Julien Alaphilippe has made clear that he's not going to go for the Tour, and I mean, he's extended his contract at Quick Step, where they're not gonna change him, to win the Tour. They're not going to change the whole team's setup that they've had for years and years and years, just to try and maybe win the Tour with Alaphilippe, which I think is not possible. I mean, given the competition there is right now, I don't see a French rider winning the Tour anytime soon.
Okay. And the Giro is, the Giro is coming up, and obviously it was, what's sad about it, particularly for Pinot, is it's one of those races where he, in the past, has kind of rebooted his career, but this year obviously not. Do you see any French challenge at the Giro?
In one word, no.
Okay.
Thank you very much to Julian. Now, while Pinot is out, who can we expect to shine in the 2021 Corsa Rosa? We asked La Course on Tête Campanissimo. Is that right, Jeremy?
Campanissimo.
Exactly that. Campanissimo.
Just as you said it.
Yes, William Fotheringham, to cast his eye over the runners and riders and the key stages in this year's Giro d'Italia.
It's the end of April, so we're in the uncomfortable hiatus between the Classics and the Giro, which starts on May the 8th in Turin. This week, the favourite is Simon Yates by virtue of his win in the Tour of the Alps, but these are uncertain times. Who else to watch as of now? There's no Thibaut Pinot, but Romain Bardet is bubbling under and apparently feeling the benefit of racing less this year. Egan Bernal's back may or may not be in shape, and if it is, he will probably be the new Simon Yates as of this time next week, given that his teammates Pavel Sivakov and Ivan Sosa don't yet look the finished article. On that note, the new boys will be worth watching. Joao Almeida should step up after last year, and everyone will be looking at Remco Evenepoel, although the latter will surely be undercooked, given he has not raced since August last year. Then again, Remco seems capable of anything, and old lags Vincenzo Nibali and Mikel Landa still merit a mention, just about. Where's it going to be won? In the Alps, of course. 2 weeks in, we've got Monte Zoncolan, and 2 days later, it's Cortina via the Fedaya, Pordoi and Jiao. That's Jiao as in ow. And there's a bonkers final weekend with the St Bernard Pass, all 30 kilometres of it, and Splugen before a climb to the finish at Alpe Motta on the Saturday, and a 30-kilometre time trial into Milan on the last day, reminiscent of 2017, when Tom Dumoulin won a cliffhanger and made headlines with that toilet stop.
Thank you to our Campanissimo. I had to do it with the actual hand movement as well to make that work. William Fotheringham there. I also tend to find as well, I don't know, Pete and Jeremy, if you find this, if you do a ride of over 100 kilometres, you also end up with an uncomfortable hiatus. Have I found that?
I've had that quite recently.
So let's talk about the Giro then. I can't believe the first Grand Tour of the year is here. I'm very excited about it. I must admit, I did think I was very pessimistic about it, and sort of excited at the same time that all the Grand Tours at the end of the year again. But who do we think? Who's winning it? Come on, Jeremy, lay your cards on the table.
Well, I think it's obvious from watching that key mountain stage in the Tour of the Alps last week that Simon Yates is in great form. But there are other riders who I think will present a challenge to him. I mean, I think that. Everyone always says this, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. He has got unfinished business after the disaster in 2018 when he was close to victory but then was undone on the Finestra by the attack of Chris Froome and lost the pink jersey and all hope of victory. So he's definitely got to go back there and to slay his demons, or put that behind him anyway, put those skeletons in the closet behind him. But whether he will be able to do that over 3 weeks, there's always still a question mark, I think, over his resilience in over 3 weeks, even though he has won the Vuelta, because we've seen him kind of have exceptional form and then it fade very, very quickly as well in the past, and in other races too. So I mean, I think he'd be my top tip, but then there are other riders who are capable of unseating him, aren't there, Pete?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens with Remco, because well, I mean, he hasn't raced since he crashed out in the Tour of Lombardy last year. And it just seems extraordinary that he's even going to the Giro, bearing in mind that he hasn't raced yet this season, and that we might even consider that he's a favourite. But given his form in the past, you can't ignore him at all. And I mean, it would be great to see Egan Bernal perform really well in the Giro as well. I mean, Italy was where he first made his breakthrough in Europe. He has he has a lot of time for racing in Italy. He loves being there, and I think he just being away from the pressure of having to lead the Ineos team at the Tour might do him some good. But I mean, his back is a bit like Pinot's back as well. It's problematic. You never really know from one week to the next how he's going to perform, and well, I mean, we don't even know whether we're going to see him at the Giro. So
well, there has been a story, hasn't there, saying I think it was in the Italian press by a very revered Italian cycling journalist saying that he was pretty certain he wouldn't start the Giro, and that the team had to move to say, oh no, he's fine. So it's hard to know what the truth is. I mean, he did look pretty good earlier on in the season, I thought, in February.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked good, but I just don't think he's looked as since the 2019 Tour. He's not looked great at all. I mean, we've seen kind of flashes of Bernal's brilliance, but when it comes to putting it together over several days in a row, he just seems to struggle. He doesn't seem to be able to get the power out that he needs to. He looks uncomfortable on the bike sometimes. We saw that at the Dauphiné last year. Obviously, we saw it at the Tour where he had to abandon, and he's still struggled in races this season. So I don't know. I mean, it's again like Pinot. He just looks a bit brittle somehow. It's kind of easy to forget that Bernal was like the Pogacar of 2018, 2019.
Yes.
That's how good he was.
Nobody was winning, and they were talking about him winning. Nobody ever winning another Tour de France again because he was so brilliant.
Well, the parallel for me is Jan Ullrich, and that's the worry because Jan Ullrich won the 1997 Tour de France. The year after Bjarne Riis won it, he was in the same team, and he came through, and there was an explosion of enthusiasm in Germany. Everybody said, "Oh, this guy's going to win 5, 6, 7 tours. You know, he's going to win until he's 30." Never won again. Never won a Tour de France again, and his career was dogged with problems, injuries, weight issues off the bike as well, personal issues.
Do you know who I blame, Jeremy? Do you know who I blame? The press. That's who I blame. The press. I thought that'd land with more humour.
Yes. Well, I ain't laughing.
So come on then, put a name on it. Who's winning the Giro d'Italia in 2021, which we're all very excited about?
Simon Yates will win the Giro.
Simon Yates. Okay. Teo Geogheganhardt's not going, is he?
No.
As the defending champion, he's going to go to the Tour. Okay. So who are you saying, Pete?
I'm going to go for the man who's not raced this season, Remco.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Double wow.
Yeah, and just one final question on it. How secure a race is it looking in this COVID world that we all now live in?
I think it's looking all right. I mean, reading in stuff in the press over the weekend, Italy's starting to open up a bit. I think the Prime Minister Draghi there says things are kind of under control. So it looks like they should be able to get through the race, no problem. I mean, the whole vaccination program's going okay in Europe at the moment, so fingers crossed.
Parts of Europe, Pete. Parts of Europe. It's going all right. I thought that'd land with more humour as well, and it didn't. I have to stop trying to land these jokes.
No laughs at all tonight.
Yeah.
You've lost it. What happened? You should have had that holiday.
I don't know. I had that week off. I took my foot off the gas. A young buck moved in and dropped the jokes. Not that I've listened to last week,
that did make me snigger.
Well, listen, thank you very much. We're now, depending on when you're listening to this, we are X amount of days ahead of the Giro d'Italia starting, when we will be back and we'll be moving into our Italian phase of life, which we're very excited about. So I have to say, ciao, Jeremy Whittle.
Buonanotte.
Okay, and ciao, Peter Cossins.
Ciao, OJ.
Oh, ciao. And ciao to you as well. Thank you very much for listening. Of course, make sure you check out flowbikes.com/aerogram. Make sure you go on there, as we say. Liège-Bastogne-Liège. You can catch it with both the men's and the women's races, as well as on-demand interviews. And the Giro d'Italia will be there as well. Check out more writing on lecourseontete.com for all your race previews and interviews. And from myself, I have to say, ciao.
Da-ti-do-di-do, chi-boom, chi-boom-boom. Da-ti-do-di-do, chi-boom, chi-boom-boom. Da-ti-do-di-do.